Hey, Douglas V. Gibbs here, Constitution Study Television here on YouTube. Great to have you. Topic today is the 3/5 clause. I get asked this question probably one of the questions I get asked most often, let's put it that way. And the 3/5 clause reads as follows. It's in Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. And if you have a pocket constitution, it should be in brackets because it's no longer applicable. And here's how it reads. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. All right, so one of the things to take away here is that this was a necessary political compromise. This was the only way to make sure we had a United States of America. Otherwise, the states that were heavy slavery and the ones that were trying to get rid of slavery would not have both signed the document. So first of all, without this compromise, there would be no country. There would be no the Constitution would never have been signed by all of the states, and we would have two countries that started from the coast rather than one, first of all. Second of all, we have to understand that the idea that the 3/5 clause is saying that it was racist and that it was saying that blacks were 3/5 of a person is not true. Once again, it was a necessary political compromise. Now, I want to break down a little bit of the history so that you understand this. It says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned. So the apportionment or the census was necessary for two things. Number one, the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives, the number of representatives that a state has, is based on the population. The other thing says direct taxes. This was before income taxes in the sense of what we see today, long before the 16th Amendment. How the federal government was paid its budget was through things like tariffs, import and export taxes, things like that. And the states, they would tax the states, then the states would tax the people. The states would pay based on their percentage of the population. So if a state was 14% of the population, based on the apportionment number, they would pay 14% of the remaining budget. Now, this was actually a key check and balance, because what it did is it also kept the federal government, for the most part, spending in a constitutional manner, because the states could refuse to pay for that part of the budget. Say, hey, you know what, federal government, this right here, this is not constitutional. We're not paying for it. Try again. So it really gave us, put the states in place to be the middleman between us and the federal government when it came to taxation. But anyway, that's a whole different video. All right, so now, but this is the reason for apportionment. So this number they're trying to come up with comes down to how much the state's going to pay in when it comes to federal budget, and how much representation they're going to get in the House. Now, that representation in the House represents power. More representatives, more power, more legislative power that state has. Okay, and there was a fear by the states that were working on getting rid of slavery and the states that were strong in slavery that one would overpower the other in the House. There was a concern. So the key was to try to keep them as close to even as possible. Now understand, at the time, all of the states had slaves. All of the states were still slave states. But the states north of Maryland were working on getting rid of slavery, slowly but surely. 1783, Pennsylvania had passed the first anti-slavery law by a state. Vermont is a territory. There was a disputed territory between New Hampshire and New York, had actually passed one in 1777 prior to Pennsylvania that would not necessarily free all the slaves, but would slowly emancipate them. After being a slave for so many years, or so many children or whatnot, would be free. So it was a concerted effort by the northern states to head in the direction of abolishing slavery. And so what had happened also is, in those northern states, the free white population was heavier, stronger. The cities were more crowded because that's where the industry was, that's where the cities were. The states where slavery was the strongest, the southern states, Maryland, Virginia, the two Carolinas, Georgia, were more rural. And so the white free population was a smaller number than that of the northern states. But the slave number was such a number that it actually made the total population in the South, if you were to count slaves, the slave population in its entirety, as being slightly higher than the North. And knowing that slave population would continue to grow at an astronomical rate, founders realized that if they were to give the South slaves apportionment as a whole number, that slavery may never be abolished because they would have all the power in the House of Representatives. So it's a necessary political compromise to ensure, number one, that all states sign on the Constitution, and number two, to keep the pro-slave states from overpowering the entire system with their pro-state legislation and agenda, because they would have too much power in the House. All right, so in other words, it had nothing to do with human worth, everything to do with mathematics, apportionment. All right, and you notice also when I read this clause, it didn't say slave. It didn't use the word slave. In fact, when everybody say, well, founders, they didn't believe it, the blacks were even human. Well, no, it says, and 3/5 of all other persons. It's using the word persons to describe these people. So there was no doubt that they were persons. There was no doubt that they were people. It's just that they were currently in a condition of enslavement. The founders, in fact, believed that the wave of abolitionism that had begun in the North would continue on through the South, and that by the time of their death, slavery would be completely outlawed, slowly but surely, state by state. That's what they believed. So this compromise was a temporary necessity until slavery because everybody knew it was the great sin, right? Everybody knew that it was wrong, or at least at the time. Even the slaveholders knew it was wrong, but at the same time, you know what? That was their bread and butter. That's how they made their living, whatnot, is because they needed the cheap labor. All right, now, what you'll notice when it comes to this number 2 is the people who recommended 3/5 were not the slaveholders. It were those opposed to slavery. Because, see, the slave owners down in the South actually wanted slaves counted as a whole number because, once again, whole number of slaves plus the whole number of free persons would outnumber all of the people, whole number of free persons and slaves in the North. So the South would have stronger power. But the North said, no. We can't have them overwhelming us like that. However, if they were to count slaves as nothing towards apportionment, the South would have too strong. If they count them as, the North would have too strong numbers, and the South wouldn't sign the Constitution. So they had to find a compromised number that was close enough in between that would keep it relatively equal. And you'll notice in history after that the United States tried to play the equal game, where every time a slave state entered the Union, a free state would. They would try to keep it as even as possible. And it worked okay, sort of, until about the last 10, 15, 20 years before the war between the states, when the new territories started getting added, and the Kansas-Nebraska Compromise and all this other stuff. And what eventually wound up happening is the free states began to outnumber the slave states in legislative power astronomically right before the war between the states. That was one of the factors, in fact, that led to the commencement of that war. Anyway, okay, so let's see. In recap, 3/5 compromise wasn't so much about making a claim that all people weren't created equal and that somehow the slaves were worth less than a whole number. It was all about limiting the slave states legislatively. In other words, limiting the power of slavery, limiting the political ability of the slave states in the legislature. So in other words, the 3/5 clause did the exact opposite of what some people accuse it of doing. Three-fifths clause wasn't racist. It was an abolitionist move. My name is Douglas V. Gibbs. Thank you for watching Constitution Study Television. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification button, check out my books, douglasvgibbs.com/books.php. Also have a new bumper sticker. If you send me $5 donation, I will send you a bumper sticker that says the U.S. Constitution trumps socialism. And also, if you want to just keep these videos coming, help fund the program. Let's keep them free. Let's keep them flowing. Let's keep them coming. Donate. You can go to douglasvgibbs.com or politicalpistachio.com. $5 a month, $10 a month, $25 a month, $2 a month. No matter how you help, it helps. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay patriotic, and as always, stay constitutional, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.